I'm Rachel.
And I'm Joe.
And we are
Two
Crazy Ketos.
And if you're new to our channel, welcome. Here on Two Crazy Ketos, we do different things like recipe videos and we do product reviews. We talk about various keto topics, and every Monday we go live on Keto Beyond the Couch because life exists beyond the couch.
You can find us in different social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And we have a website, which is twocrazyketos.com, and that's where you're going to find all of our different recipes. Now, we do upload at least 5 new videos every single week, so make sure you subscribe to our channel.
And don't forget to hit the little bell icon, and that way, every single time there is something that we just can't wait to talk about, you'll be alerted to it.
I am so angry.
Yeah.
I'm so angry.
Joe woke up in a mood, let me tell you. And I think it is for good reason. You know, we feel very strongly that our purpose is to help people get well, for them to experience health in their body. And we understand that there is a challenge to this already. Whenever you're starting something new, there's going to be a natural questioning of, am I doing what's right? Am I going to make my situation better, or am I going to make my situation worse?
Right. So I woke up this morning and found a whole slew of articles put out by CNN, The Guardian, and a lot of other news organizations. And CNN's, I have some of these linked down below in the description. And CNN's article, I have it on my phone so that I can read it here. Eating red meat is linked to higher risk of type 2 diabetes, according to a study.
Now, if I see that headline and I am just embarking on my keto journey, I have not experienced any deep prescription of medicine. I haven't had any real change in health momentum. Maybe I'm just thinking of this in terms of losing a few pounds. That may stop me right in my tracks. Also, if I have a family member that is embarking on a keto journey, I'm about to call them up because I'm worried for them, right? Especially if I'm not eating, a keto way of eating.
So I want to start this live stream off with, we are not doctors, nurses, health professionals. Everything we talk about is based on our own personal experience, what we've learned, what we've studied. I am a certified master health coach. I can tell you experiences that we've had in our own lives and in our family members' lives and lots of friends and lots of subscribers. So we are not doctors. And the folks at Harvard Medical are much smarter than I am.
We do not proclaim to be.
I don't proclaim to be
smarter
one of
than them.
Now we do happen to have a friend who is in Harvard.
Yeah.
And is a doctor.
Dr. Chris Palmer.
And has found that, wait a second.
I think he would take umbrage with
help
this.
Things.
Yeah.
But I have such a major problem with this article and the fear mongering that you're going to see in these articles over the next couple of days. And I have spent the entire morning researching and reading these studies. We're supposed to be going to Universal Studios right now. And we're like, stop everything.
Yeah.
We have to do that.
We have
to talk about this. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knows we're not doctors, okay? And pray for our channel because this is one of those things where hey, going against the grain, okay? But this is my opinion on this study. I want to make this, we're going to talk about why I have a problem with this study. I'm not necessarily going to say they're wrong. I'm just saying there's a problem with the study.
Yes.
So I'm going to read a little bit of this. It says, see it from CNN. A new large study by Harvard researchers suggests that having 2 servings of red meat per week will increase your risk of developing type 2 diabetes later in life, and the risk further increases with greater consumption, according to a study published Thursday in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, which I've linked down below, which is very short and not really a study. Everything seems to, according to every article, and you really can't find anything, to date back to a 2011 study that was done and published in JAMA, which is also linked down below. And it was done at Harvard. And they were basically watching a bunch of nurses, and it was like 80% women. And then they followed up with men. And The problem with the study, when you read it, it was a questionnaire thing updated every 2 to 4 years.
Right.
Because it was done over a long period of time. So reading this, it says the association between red meat and type 2 diabetes has been observed in different populations worldwide. We're strengthening existing evidence with improved data and techniques. I hope our study will settle the debate regarding whether we should limit our red meat intake. About 462 million people worldwide are affected by type 2 diabetes, a rate that's rapidly increasing. So it basically goes on and talks about that.
Diabetes are scary.
So the authors studied 216,695 people who had participated in a nurses' health study and the nurses' health study 2 and the health professionals follow-up study from 1976 to 1989.
So stop right there. That sounds like there has been a large population of people studied. This seems like a responsible study that's taking into account a lot of people. So when you see numbers like that and like a length of the study saying like, man, we've been studying this since 1976, that makes you think, ooh, I need to lean in.
So I want to say they're going to try to scare you with numbers.
Right.
So it says participants were, most of whom were white and age 46 on average at the beginning of the study, 36 when the NHS2 began, and 53 when the HPFS was initiated. All these articles are linked down below. Are all followed up with all the way through and no later than 2017. Participants reported their health status via a questionnaire, and their food intake was measured every 2 to 4 years with questionnaires that asked them to report their average intake of different foods and beverages over the last year.
Okay, so first of all, there's a flaw right there. Number one, I am not watching you in like a clinical trial. Like I don't have eyes on what, as the person, if I'm the scientist, I'm the researcher, I'm not watching you eat this food to confirm that you're telling me the truth. I am also trusting you to have been able to recall the things that you ate 2 years ago. Can you remember specifically what you ate 2 weeks ago?
Right. I mean, we're going to get into that. Yeah. Okay. So it says at the end of the follow-up period, nearly 22,800 people developed type 2 diabetes. And those who ate the most total red meat had a 62% higher risk of developing the disease compared with people who ate the least. Eating the most processed and unprocessed red meat was linked with a 51% and 40% higher risk of type 2 diabetes, respectively. Processed meat, now this is interesting. The authors define processed meat as sausage, beef, pork hot dogs, bacon, processed meat sandwiches, and one serving is 28 grams of bacon or 45 grams of the other meats. Pause right there. Can we say this study, the title of this study is Red Meat Causes Diabetes, right?
Right.
Sausage, almost all sausage is pork hot dogs, bacon. That's not red meat.
That is not right. What is the commercial they always said?
Pork, the other white meat.
The other white meat. So
that's not red meat.
That's exactly.
Okay. And by the way, and then they say unprocessed meat, which there's no such thing as an unprocessed meat. Can we get that?
You're not eating directly off the cow.
The other ones are overly processed. Okay. But all meat is processed. It's killed, butchered, hung to dry for dry aging, cut up. I mean,
there's a process.
Meat is and then you chew it.
Exactly.
Unprocessed meat was lean and extra lean hamburger, regular hamburger, beef, pork, lamb as a sandwich or mixed dish, and pork, beef, and lamb as a main dish. 85 grams of pork, beef, or lamb is constituted one serving of unprocessed meat.
So right there, again, you have a lot of variables that they are admitting. What is the problem? When they're eating it as like a straight up source of meat? No, they're eating it as a sandwich. They're eating this meat as a component of a casserole. So you have eyes on the meat. You're looking at the meat. However, there's lots of other variables that they are not taking into consideration. They're not looking at what else is mixed with the meat. Like, right. Is there potatoes? Is there rice? Is it pasta? That sort of thing.
And we're going to get into that because I want to finish going over some of the important parts of this article. So going on, it says, Of note, individuals reported consuming red meat most frequently, with each cohort were more likely to eat less fish, less fruit, and eat more calories. They all weighed more and they engaged in less physical activity. This suggests that they had poorer overall diet quality and they were less likely to engage in healthy lifestyle behaviors. Going down further in the article, it says this is their reasoning. They say that saturated fat, which is high in red meat, is found to reduce insulin sensitivity and the functioning of beta cells in the pancreas, therefore, which are supposed to produce insulin. So that's why you have high glucose, because you're eating saturated fat. That's what they say. They also say, additionally, heme iron, which is the iron found in animal foods, will increase insulin resistance and the impairment of beta cell functioning and oxidative stress and the imbalance of free radicals and antioxidants in the bodies. And then it says the elevated use of amino acid glycine, which naturally occurs in most proteins, is also observed after red meat intake and is associated with diabetes risk. Excess body fat is another risk factor for diabetes, and red meat consumption was one of the dietary factors for the largest association with weight gain. I'm going to let you guys read the rest of this article. They go down and they basically say you should be substituting, and instead you should be eating only one serving of red meat a week. And then instead you should have legumes, nuts, things like that.
Well, they're making that assumption for you.
That's what they're telling. In the CNN article, it ends with a line that I think says it all. Choosing plant-based sources of protein will help reduce greenhouse gas emissions and climate change.
What does that have to do with the study? What does that have to do with the health momentum gained by not eating red meat? Why, when you're telling me I should be concerned for my health and not eat red meat, are you pointing out that it's making me more environmentally conscious?
Right.
By not eating red meat? Here is my biggest issue. Whereas Joe is like, I'm very upset with like the science side. Like I'm upset with the flaws in the study, because this is a scientific study that would not get a good grade on a college exam, right? Like you would not, there's too many variables. There's too much subjective data collection. There's too much room for error in this study. And so Joe was like, I'm really mad at this study.
Yeah, but I know you want to get into the journalism aspect, but I want to actually pull up the actual study that was published yesterday. Okay. And it's not even a study. It's relating back to this 2011 study. It's basically a follow-up on it. But remember I said they were going to scare you with numbers?
Right.
So they're saying the methods, again, studied 216,695 participants, from 81% were female. Okay. And here's where they're scaring the number. Our results: over 5,483,981 person years of follow-up were documented, with 22,761 type 2 diabetes cases, because they're counting each person's year over it. So they're trying to scare you with these high numbers.
They're putting you in front of just a closet crammed with just arbitrary numbers, so that when you open up this study, it just absolutely comes in like an avalanche of fear on top of you. And for a lot of people, this is going to effectively bury their resolve to go on something like keto.
I'm so frustrated. I'm drinking coffee.
I know, right? So this is your coffee experience for the day.
And it's a small one.
With butter.
Okay, so back into these results. And again, this is the article this is the study that everybody is, all of these, they're all pointing to this study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, but it relates back to the JAMA study from Harvard from 2011. And it goes on to say, it gives you the ratios, 1.6% confidence interval. And it says the percentage lower risk of type 2 diabetes was associated by substituting one serving of nuts or legumes for red meat was 30%. So they're saying if you consume nuts and legumes and nuts, your chance of type 2 diabetes will go down by 30%. In addition, it says if you substitute one serving of dairy, yay, cheese, right? For processed or unprocessed red meat, it will lower your risk of type 2 diabetes by another 22%. That's what they're saying. And again, every one of these articles ends the article with talking about the fact that
Civic
eating less
responsibility.
meat will be better for the environment.
Yes.
Before I even mention that, and then you want to talk about
I do.
the
Go ahead.
journalism thing. Here's my problem with this study, as Rachel kind of alluded to. Number one, you're asking people to fill out a questionnaire. And I saw somebody put in there, like, that's not a way to do a study.
No.
It was a questionnaire every 2 to 4 years. And there's no real details. And every study, that article on this, and every link back to the original study, there's no real details on this. There's no thing like, this is what they all ate. Can't find any of that.
Yeah, no details to it.
You're asking people to fill out a questionnaire of what you ate. But my thing is what else did they eat? You're only saying the people who ate red meat, more of them had type 2 diabetes after this long period of time than people who weren't. But what else were they eating?
Was there
How
sugar?
much more sugar? How much did they weigh? So weight has something to do with type 2 diabetes. I mean, the bottom line is our body has an almost unlimited capacity to store fat. But it does reach its tipping point. And when it reaches its tipping point, that's where we get into diabetes. But I look at this. Most people, and first of all, they have a higher incidence eating processed meat. Let's take out the fact that bacon and pork and hot dogs are not red meat, at least pork hot dogs, they're not red meat. Let's say they're all red meat. When you're consuming lunch meat and hot dogs and that kind of stuff, what are most people, not keto people, what are most people consuming that with?
Bread.
Yeah. And condiments and potato chips.
French fries.
Most people who eat steak outside of keto, what does it serve with? Mashed potatoes, baked potatoes.
The smallest part of the dish, a lot of times when you would go to like a restaurant or you're making a plate for yourself, was the meat. The meat was like the hamburger in the middle of it, topped with all of the other things, and then all the side dishes.
I also like the fact they said that a serving of bacon is 28 grams. It's like one slice. Like, no. So to me, this study is more flawed than the sucralose study. And everybody knows what I think about the sucralose study, okay?
Not good.
But if you want to do a real study, and I will accept it if you can do a real study and it's not funded, and I don't know who this is funded by,
but it sounds very fishy.
It sounds fishy. But if you want to do a real study and prove to me that red meat is going to cause diabetes in me, I want you to take 1,000 people who only eat red meat.
Yes.
And then 1,000 people who eat the standard American diet. And at the end of it, show me the increase in diabetes.
Right.
Because all I know is that there's a lot of people in my life and a lot of our subscribers
who have actually,
people like Rachel's mom,
who
reversed type 2 diabetes, and yet they're eating almost all red meat. I was not a type 2 diabetic that I know of because I refused to go to the doctor prior to keto. I still don't want to go to a doctor, but I do now for you guys. I may have been a type 2 diabetic. I don't know. I was absolutely insulin resistant. And we know that Rachel was at minimum in pre-diabetes. And now our A1Cs are like 4.9, 5.1. So if our A1C has gone down and our diet is 95% red meat, something is fishy here.
So my heart is for the one. We talk about that. Like, we always wake up every single morning where there's one more person to reach. That's our desire, is to reach one more person and to hopefully help them
look through the chat while you
regain their health. Okay. At the same time, my heart really gets protective for the one person who misinformation harms, who misinformation leads them to quit their pursuit for better health out of fear. That really upsets me. So I am not a doctor, nurse, or health professional, but I am a classically trained journalist who worked for more than a decade for actual newspapers, including the Washington Post. I even had the privilege of working with my newspaper hero, Bob Woodward. Like, it was a great honor to work with that man who shared my love for investigative reporting, getting in there and getting serious about bringing people the unbiased truth. My joy was always to write an article where at the end of it, you didn't know how I felt. You did not know what my opinion was on the matter, right? Like that is what a journalist, that's what your job is. And we received all the time things that were like press releases, which is basically what this was a press release that came across a reporter's desk. You are not supposed to.
Well, one of them you will see when I go down below, I actually linked the actual press release from Harvard.
You are not supposed to take that press release and just regurgitate it as truth without questioning it.
Pause. Not only are you not supposed to do that, if you go read the Harvard, the CNN article, if you read the Guardian article and a couple of the other ones that I read, they literally quote the Harvard press release. Almost the entire article is the Harvard press release, but with CNN slapped on top.
Your due diligence as a reporter is to track down not a quote that's in a press release. I need to have eyes on the scientist. I need to speak with the researcher myself. I do not take for granted that the press release has even presented like all the things that were on the scientist's mind. I need to have reported who is paying for this study. Right. That information, who backed it, who supported it, who asked for this study to be done needs to be reported in the article. Okay. So I also need to have the opposite opinion. I need to first of all, even before that, I need to seek out somebody involved in the study. I need to make sure that it is an actual living, breathing person who has participated in this study. This is not something where you are concerned about the identity of a victim, where you need to even worry about anonymity, right? This is an issue where I should be able to speak to somebody who has participated in this study and could say like, yeah, this is what I ate. Give me a typical day. If the study doesn't provide what was a particular day, I need to find somebody in that study so that I can ask them, tell me what you ate on these days. How did you log it? So that you as the reporter can present information that may be like, oh, well, it says it's about red meat, but it was red meat in conjunction with other things. Now I can go back to the research and say, don't you think that there were too many variables for this study?
Right. It's like Chris Bear went a few years ago, and he was actually doing it the year we met them, was doing the 100 days of keto chow. One of the reasons that he did that study or that test on himself, and I've had a lot of conversations with him about it, was he wanted to do something with Dave Feldman to figure out the impact of different fat sources on his personal body. Well, if you want to figure out what the best fat source for your body is, the only variable that you can change to have a good study on yourself would be the fat source. Everything else you do has to be the same. That's very difficult with our regular eating because, you have too many variables. Like if one day you're eating steak and one day you're eating chicken, well, there's different fat sources there. There's different amounts of fat. So he ate keto chow for 100 days where the only variable every 2 weeks was the fat source. And then he was able to document everything with labs and everything else and go down and go, hey, for my body, Chris's body, the absolute best fat source where he had the best blood work was butter. It was the absolute best fat source for his body. It's where he had higher HDL, he had lower LDL, he had lower triglycerides. Everything across the board was better with butter. On the other side, some of his worst was when he was using MCT oil, because MCT oil was lowering his HDL and raising his triglycerides, two things that we don't want. But again, he changed one variable. Here you're asking people a questionnaire and it's just whatever we ate for the day, and you're having a correlation here that, okay, these people were eating more meat, so they have higher diabetes. But what else were they eating with it? And then when you get into a questionnaire, here's the thing. How truthful were they? I don't know about you all. I'm not even truthful in my own food log sometimes, right? If I'm filling out Chronometer, there are times like, do I really need to put down that I just had that Zevia?
Do you think that I was reporting the Reese's peanut butter cups that I was eating while crying on the bathroom floor?
Right.
Like when I was at the height of carb addiction, I wouldn't want you to know the totality of what I was eating.
There was a reason you were eating it on the bathroom floor.
Exactly. Like with the door locked from my own family. I'm not going to share that information with like a scientist who does not have me in a room where they can see what I'm doing.
I mean,
right?
How many of us lied when we went to Weight Watchers meetings, Jenny Craig meetings, Nutrisystem meetings, and you go in, I didn't cheat, but the scale's up 5, but I didn't cheat. I'm telling you, it must be a problem with the Nutrisystem food.
Right, exactly. So the other point that I have an issue with is these articles are not interviewing another side. How come I'm not seeing a carnivore being interviewed? How come I'm not seeing somebody who has been eating red meat exclusively for the length of time that this study's going on? There is no effort to dispute the claims of this study. And so what my challenge is like, I'm very upset with the journalists. Who are we
Not
working
just CNN. For? There's about 20 articles that came out in the last 48 hours.
I'm so upset. We as journalists don't work for the study. We work for the readers. That is who we are working for. And we are supposed to present unbiased information after we have done our due diligence to really investigate issues, to bring people the truth. We don't take for granted that a press release that comes across our desk is the truth. We go and we investigate that. That is the job of the journalist. Right. And if you're not going to do your job, journalist, then I suggest you step aside and allow somebody else to take that position.
Right. Now, again, I have no proof of this, but the fact that every article that I've read this morning, not the studies, but it's even mentioned in the studies, but every article that's been put out in the last 48 hours, somewhere in there, it talks about the fact that eating less meat is better for the environment. I can't prove it, but it sounds to me like there's another agenda with somebody possibly throwing money, like, let's get more people to eat less meat. You see this, right, with the pushing of the Impossible Burger meat and all these other things. We all know who they are, and I'm not going to say their name because they probably have a lot of money invested in YouTube. There are billionaires, and every one of us have some of this person's product in our house in some way, shape, or form, who are staunch vegans and firmly believe that we need to stop all animal eating in the United States and around the world, and is even purchasing up all of the grazing land in the Midwest and in the United States so that cattlemen cannot let their cattle graze. Do you think maybe they're throwing some money? I mean,
at the news networks.
The guy's a multi-billionaire, right?
Who owns the news networks?
Right. So let's look at all of that and then think about this. Now, the idea that eating animals is causing the environment problems, I want to say a word that I'm not allowed to say. So just bull beep, okay?
Bull beep.
Okay?
I like it.
That is nonsense. Go talk to some of the cattlemen. I mean, it's nonsense. Here's the thing. You want us to eat more vegetables, more soy, more corn. How is that being farmed? Are we raising and growing and cutting it down and processing all that like the Amish people?
The land?
Are we only using horses to plow and the land? Or are we using farming equipment? Are we using John Deere equipment?
With gasoline?
Are we using trains and diesels to process all of that wheat and the soy, to transport it around the country and the world? Because I believe that all of that stuff has a much harder impact on the environment than the cows that are eating and pooping in the grass.
The cows have been pooping in the grass for quite some time.
Right.
The new kid on the block is trains and planes and automobiles.
Right.
Like that's the newer kid on the block. Have we been able to really muck things up quickly in the generations that have had planes and trains and automobiles?
There's more people.
Absolutely.
Listen,
absolutely.
I own 3 cars. I'm absolutely will say
That's a
I
problem.
contribute to greenhouse emissions. One of my cars is a diesel truck. I hate all of the emission stuff that they put on it because it makes it less efficient than before they put it on. But I understand we're trying to help the environment. All of the truckers have that. My belief is that the vegan type of stuff is worse for the environment than the carnivore. Because again, they have to grow all the food and it is all being transported. And oh, by the way, most of that stuff is highly, you don't want me to eat processed meat, but we're eating stuff where we're turning soy into a hot dog.
I think we're getting a little off track, but because there's like,
let's get into
there's a lot of variables, right? Like, and it's just very, very upsetting because they're making a blanket claim that I am concerned will make a lot of people fearful and will rob them of future health.
Yeah.
That's what I'm concerned about.
So here's the thing. If you've read this study and have people freaking out, ignore it, ignore them, ignore the doctors who are going to put this in front of you. And I'm sure it's going to happen and go, look. And my thing is, I want you to show me the proof with a study other than asking people what they ate every 2 to 4 years.
Right.
Okay. You wanted to, my dad was a clinical chemist. I did a lot of chemistry experiments at home and I loved chemistry in school and I loved biology in school. And you had to document every variable. You had to have blind studies. You had to have placebos. A questionnaire is not a study.
Yeah.
It's just not a study.
This is not a Cosmo quiz.
Yeah. You want me to believe that red meat's going to cause me to have diabetes and cause all these other problems, then study people. I volunteer for a year or longer. I'll volunteer. 5-year study on I only eat red meat for 5 years.
Hunger Games tribute.
Right?
Yeah.
And then take another 1,000 people and have them not eat red meat and eat a vegetarian, a vegan, whatever diet you want that doesn't have a lot of red meat. And let's see who does better at the end.
Let's do it.
Then I will believe that red meat causes diabetes if across the board, everybody who is eating almost all red meat has diabetes.
And then we need some courageous journalists to bring that to the forefront.
Yeah.
When you get that information, will they make it the headline like they make this the headline, or will they bury it in the back like an obituary?
Yeah.
That's my question, because a lot of times when the truth comes out, they bury it. Like, when they take it back, and they print it, it's like in the back, like you ruin someone's reputation with the headline, but then you're like, oh, like we have a retraction, like, but we bury that in the back.
So if you like seeing videos like this, take a look at some of the videos we have linked right over there. Also, make sure you take a look at our most recent video that I'm going to put right over here.
But whether you head this way or you head this way, don't forget to head this way. Subscribe to our channel and click the little bell icon. And that way, every single time we upload a new video, you'll be alerted to it.
Till next time.
Bye.